Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for joining us for yet another informative and exciting session at the Hussain Global Digital Conference, where we are here to discover, learn, and share new approaches to promoting the message of Karbala and Imam Hussain alayhi salam. I'm your host, Hussain Sajjad Hussain, and I'm excited to host this panel titled The Art of Karbala. Now, art as we know it represents symbols and signs that evoke the heart to see, touch, and feel. And therefore, art representing Imam Hussain becomes a means to connect to the divine. With this brief introduction, I'm delighted to welcome our expert panelist and guest speaker, Fatima Agha, who is an Islamic visual artist and an art teacher who connects her passion for artistic expressions with the divine. Fatima has also exhibited her work in numerous trade shows and events since 2018. Fatima, assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for joining us.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm really honored.
So, Fatima, straight off the bat to begin with, what do Imam Hussain and the message of Karbala mean to you?
For me, the message of Karbala means being larger than yourself, connecting yourself to a power greater than yourself, and becoming invincible and not relenting in the face of injustice, not relenting in the face of cruelty, standing by our principles and not thinking that just because we're less in number, that it makes any difference. I think this empowers one single human being, even if they're alone in their journey, so much that just the story of Karbala and Imam Hussain can become enough for someone's entire life and their journey.
Amazing. Now, when we speak about the message of Imam Hussain and how you mentioned how he's inspiring, what would you say are the latest and creative methods of promoting his message and of Karbala to others?
So, keeping in mind that our theme is art, we need to understand that there's so many ways of expressing ourselves. Even as human beings, we're told that 95% of our communication is through our body language. So we're now understanding that it's not just the word that comes out of the mouth that can be inspiring, but everything about a human being and what they do and express in different ways can become a means of giving a message. There's a hadith of the Holy Prophet that says that tabligh has 70 ways, and the last one is through the tongue. This says a lot about, us exploring different ways of spreading a message. And art can therefore mean everything. It can mean theater, play, it can mean visual art, it can mean digital art, it can mean, multimedia work, sculpture, so many things, because there are, again, different manifestations of the same essence.
I mean, you touched upon some of these contemporary forms of art, right? What would you say is the position of traditional art, the ones that everybody is so familiar with, the paintings and drawings? What is the position of such art in today's society? Do you think that position is no more valuable, or do you still think it has some power and influence in portraying a message?
So I'm trained as a traditional Islamic artist from the center in UK, in fact, Princess School of Traditional Arts. And over there, the whole aim is to preserve and conserve the art that stems in sacredness. And traditional art is based in the idea that the divine manifests itself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expresses his beauty through his manifestations. He doesn't come to us in his essence. We can never touch his essence, but the essence of God is manifested through the mountains and the flowers and the human beings, and his miracles can be seen in everything. So in the Quran he says, "Sanurihim ayatina fil afaqi wa fi anfusihim." I have put my signs within you and in the horizons. So it's Allah's name, Al-Musawwir. He himself expresses himself through these manifestations. And being the representative of the Khalifatullah, we follow the same way of expressing our divinity, our connection to the divine. So as long as we are a combination of body and soul, we will always be grounded in traditional art, because traditional art takes us back home. It takes us back to our soul. It takes us back to God, and our soul is nafakhtahu fihi min ruhi. It is the breath of God, the spirit of God that was breathed into us. So traditional art, painting, I mean, I can go on and on about the whole history of how traditional and sacred art has evolved over the centuries. It was always man in search of meaning, man looking for the higher power, man wanting to surrender to that divine light within herself. And that's why we see that art in its traditional form will always be new and fresh for the hearts that seek truth.
Amazing. So when we speak about Karbala, right, and we know that there are so many emotions regarding Karbala, the event of Ashura, you have acts of bravery, acts of sacrifice, acts of loyalty, acts of injustice, from the enemies, acts of bravery, as I mentioned, right? How does art play in all of these emotions, and why is art such a vital tool in promoting the message of Karbala?
So I think that the story of Karbala is a story of love. It's the story of Imam Hussain not just being this one man with a family fighting for justice, but becoming a legacy that changes hearts every year, and has been having that effect on the hearts of so many millions of people over the centuries. I think that this story can only be understood when we go beyond the mind, because when we see these acts of bravery and sacrifice, they look humanly impossible. One of the aspects of the story of Karbala that always inspires me immensely is the point where Hur brings his army to Imam Hussain, stops him in the way, and Imam Hussain, instead of getting intimidated, instead of feeling besieged in the middle of nowhere with his family and children, feeling scared for his life, he offers him water. And when he's offering this grand act of sacrifice, this massive act of being humane, and he says that we will talk later, but I can see that you and your horses are thirsty, and I would like to offer you some water. This was his own very limited supply that he could have very easily said, I need to plan ahead for my family and I need to have my reserves. But there is this tawakkul, there's this faith, there's this a yaqeen in being good and godly, that the saints of God only can do that. So these things touch your heart. A man who's mechanical, who's working with logic, who's going with the brain will say, well, this was a very illogical thing to do, to give up your reserves, as in an army in a strategy of war, you would be like, well, let's take care of our reserves. In fact, history says that at that point, if Imam Hussain had wanted, he could have killed them all, because they were so feeble and thirsty. They were very weak. They couldn't have fought. But there's this element of Imam's groundedness in being on the right path, doing the right thing, doing the godly thing. So when something touches your heart, and it has this aspect of evoking an emotion in you, then words fail us, you know. And art, I think, can be and has been such a beautiful way of expressing those emotions and feelings. With the stroke of artist's paint and color, you see those emotions being expressed, which I think words won't suffice.
Mm. No, I certainly agree. I mean, when I grew up, the picture that comes to my mind the most when I look at Karbala, is the Khaymaga, and when it was lit on fire, on Shamia Ghariba, and as a child growing up, you'd always question what is that scenery, and then when it is described in words, you kind of then feel the emotion and the power, and the oppression that the Ahl Bayt and the women had gone through. So certainly, I think, especially from a young age, art is certainly very, very powerful to lay the foundation when we're trying to promote and convey a story. Let's talk about yourself a little bit. You are somebody who is a renowned artist, and you've displayed your pieces in different parts of the world. What inspired you to start this journey of becoming an artist, and what are the key lessons that you can share with us of what you've learned along the way?
So interestingly, the scene of Shama Gariba that you mentioned is a painting that I gifted to my mother. I actually painted a depiction of that very moment where, Bibi Sakina is left and the khemas are empty. And I gifted it to my mother. And yes, these emotions that are evoked in us, they for the artist, it is a calling within. You just feel this movement within you. You're propelled into expressing these very heavy emotions, and you feel like I need to, let this out, and you express it. For me, it was something like that. I was going through postnatal depression after my son was born. I didn't know what was happening to me at the time, and I started taking courses in self-development. And I was guided to follow my passion and what brings joy to my heart. And painting has been so close to my heart, but I had left it for a long time, and I came back to it not knowing that it would become so big. That's why we got to follow our heart. So, it was a hard connection, and I just painted something because I was listening to a very holy kalam, and it evoked these emotions, and I painted something, and suddenly it was appreciated, and more people wanted more work, and it just propelled me into this field. And since that day, I feel that I feel like this art is not just something that I'm expressing, but an energy that I can pass on to the onlooker. And that is why, once I stepped into this field, I really understood why some paintings might just have one stroke on them, but they're so highly valued. It's because it's not just the physical aspect of the painting that touches the heart. We're almost transmitting the energy of the artist and what they were feeling and how they were experiencing that moment through that work, and we hand it over to the spectators.
Amazing. And what would you say are some of the key lessons you've learned along the way?
Yeah, I think one of the first is that as an artist, there are a couple of paths you can take. One is that you start to realize, okay, what makes more money, what kind of art sells more, and if you're not very conscious, you can get caught up in that. And if you get caught up in that, then you kind of betray yourself, you know. And as an artist, you have to stay true to yourself, and you have to, I think, in a very beautiful way, be brave to not let these fears get in the way of whether my work will sell or not, or things like that. And you just have to be true to yourself and keep making what speaks to you. So that's number one. And the other thing, because I realized that for so long I was making art, but it was just a honing of my skills, and I would just copy masters, who had done great pieces of work, and I would copy their work, or I would try to make what I would see is selling in the market just to hone my skills. None of that would ever sell. I never felt the confidence. But when it was just completely from my heart, something original, like my music just came out, and then it just touched hearts, and then I didn't know what it held in it. So as an artist, we have to be original. We have to stay authentic. These are the names of God. Al-Haq, God is truth. God is Ahad. He's one. He's unique. So we emulate God's character. As a musawwir, as an artist, we have to stay true to ourselves. The other lesson is that I did not go through the normal fine art college degree in fine art. And perhaps I'm really grateful to God that it didn't work out for me, because I'm very grounded in spirituality when it comes to expressing my work. And there's a shyness. There's almost an apologetic attitude towards talking about divinity in art schools. They want to keep it as secular as possible. And a lot of the direction of artwork goes into being a medium of talking about what is going wrong in the world, and we want to bring attention to it. So a lot of the art becomes very disturbing, and it brings a lot of anguish and disturbance and restlessness. And that has its function. Art has to evoke an emotion so that we can move into a direction of making the world a better place. But then, as an artist, you have that choice. Would you like to create that kind of art, or you want to create an art that can bring peace to people? And I kind of chose the latter. For me, I would like that wherever my piece of work goes, every morning I hear my friends, the people who've taken my art, they'll say, I've put it above my bed. Every morning I wake up, I see it, and I feel a sense of serenity and peace, and it gives a good start to my day. So for me, my art is like zikr. It's a remembrance of God. And in fact, my solo show is called Zikr because, I believe that zikr is the remembrance of your beloved, which happens inevitably because you're in love with your beloved, and you can't forget remembering the one you love. So, for me, that is what I learned, that my art, I have chosen this path, that I wanted to be a remembrance of the beloved.
Incredible. What are the challenges that you encounter, especially when it comes to Karbala? As we mentioned earlier, there are many emotions that come out of Karbala and the history of what took place. What are the challenges as an artist do you face? So, for example, I know, for instance, the more traditional people would say we should avoid showing the faces of the Ahlul Bayt and the holy personalities, right? How do you overcome these, I guess, feedback from people and what the community expects of you and what art should be? So you have one vision in mind, and then at the same time you have the community and what they would expect of you.
Right, brilliant question. Okay, so first of all, the Holy Prophet says, "Innamal a'malu binniyat." So when the Holy Prophet is saying that, he means to say that whatever act we're doing, our intention has to be in the right place. An artist who's coming with a sense of reverence and deep sacredness and respect for the holy, tragedy of Karbala, and wants to use his skills to share that story with the world. Of course, they don't have any malintentions, associated with it, or any kind of uh, you know, those things. But keeping in mind that this is a sacred art and we want to be respectful, when there's a will, there's a way, right? So, as an artist today, especially, we have so many means of overcoming these challenges. I mean, even though I work hands-on and I work with paint and brushes and canvas, I do create sketches in a digital form first, and then sometimes I take help of these modern equipment on my iPad with my pencil. I will work around it in a way so that you don't have to directly show the face. You can show the behind side. You can blur out the face with a piece of cloth or wind or something like that. The idea is that an artist's skill is going to speak through these challenges and restrictions. One of the paintings I did, which has been one of my favorite works recently, was on the Holy Prophet. And as part of the zikr, I had incorporated holy personalities in my work. Now, Holy Prophet becomes a very, very controversial issue when it comes to, his representation in art. So I just created a flying horse with a green cape. And green is the color of Prophet's dome, and green is the color of the heart. We study the yogic. We know that heart is the heart chakra is green. So the Holy Prophet was a man of the heart. He was Rahmatul lil Alameen. So what I just did is that, the flying horse was the representation of his ascension, the Barak going on Mi'raj, and the green cape was a representation of his presence. you know. And the message was very clear. We use these symbols and signs to give a message, and that is the most profound aspect of art. And I'm so glad that you got our conversation to come this way. If you have the next question ready, that's okay, but I would like to share a little bit insight into the idea of signs and symbols, if that's okay. You're muted. You're muted.
Challenges of modern technology. I was saying, no, by all means, please do go ahead. We want to get into your mind and see exactly how it is that you convey your message and what your thought process is. Because, like I said, we do have expectations from the community, right? Often they will look at an art piece, many of them will like it, but then you have those influences within the mosque and our centers who say, no, this is too much. We can't convey this message. This didn't happen, for example, right? Maybe Sakina's earrings were not stitched in this manner, or perhaps one of the shaheed wasn't trampled upon like this. So you have the naysayers, and to combat their feedback it must be challenging. So please do go ahead and express yourself.
Right. So just before I go to the next idea on the signs and symbols, what you said about the authenticity of history. Again, it will be a path that the artist will choose because it gives you that freedom of expression as an artist, just like the poets did. So if you read the poetry of Mir Anis, we see that there was a lot of exaggeration, there was a lot of additions, which later on somehow got added into historical accounts from the members, which is another conversation for another time, how to decipher the authenticity of these events. However, as an artist, you want to evoke an emotion, and as long as you can give that disclaimer that this is my depiction or it is in my opinion, you can, I think, move a little bit ahead of yourself or the current status quo, and step out of that little very restricted boundary and say, as an artist, you can exercise that freedom of expression to be poetic in your expression, because an artist is a dreamer. An artist is somebody who daydreams. An artist is somebody who can imagine things and conjure things, but not with a bad intention, but an intention to highlight something, enhance something, make it even better and more evocative for the onlooker. So I think as an artist, we do enjoy that freedom to some extent because we're not giving a historical account. We are just depicting what we feel. So if we are painting the heart of Imam Hussain and we paint a chest, and the chest is open and we see a galaxy inside it, then it is sorry. So sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Okay. So I don't know how to switch off the Wi-Fi calls. Yeah, so just coming back to this discussion about the depiction, I think an artist can play a little bit with the boundaries and
I liked where you are giving the example of Imam Hussein's chest and the galaxy. I was actually very drawn into that artistic expression.
Right. So yeah, so if an artist is going to paint the chest of Imam and depict a whole galaxy inside it, this is the artist's way of saying that he was an expansive soul, made of stardust. What is above, so below. The whole universe is encompassed within us, and it just gives you these goosebumps when you see this imagery. I mean, and it just makes you feel like I want to be like that. I'm inspired. I want to hold the whole universe in my heart and be generous and be giving. So you see, of course, actually, we don't see that galaxy, we don't see that universe, but it's a symbol. It's a way of expression that is so profound, which is far more than what the words can do. So coming to my very favorite, topic of signs and symbols, there's a beautiful book called Symbols and Archetypes, and it's a book by Martin Lings, and he's a mystic philosopher. He's a convert to Islam, and he says that if we understood that this life in this world of manifestation, the Zahiri dunya, is actually just a symbol that is, it's a coded reality, it's a language of God that needs to be decrypted, we would understand the purpose of life. And what he says is that there's a verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I send everything in a due measure. And that means that everything we see here is just a symbol, like a signpost, pointing to a higher reality, which is in higher realms. A very small example, mystics say that, people who study Irfan, who are on the path and who have the knowledge of the presence, they say that water is just a symbol of knowledge. So when we look at water in the higher realms, knowledge is represented through water. And what we understand through that is that there are higher meanings, higher realities, higher forms of knowledge that are encapsulated within something which looks very simple. But it is far more than what meets the eye. And this is the advantage an artist has, that just through a painting of the galaxy, the artist can express a far higher meaning, in just that image. And we know that, the eyes, the visual impact today in today's world is very, very effective. We actually, there's a whole science on the subliminal messages that the eyes receive. So the visual aspect of gaining knowledge, this way of sensory input of information, is so effective that it can really have a lasting effect on our hearts and minds. So for me, therefore, art just becomes a way of the sunnat of God, because God has put his deep realities into symbols and signs. And as an artist, when I put something on the canvas, those are also symbols that are talking of something much bigger and greater. And in that way, the saga of Karbala, it's it's a way of giving a message which is far more touching than just saying be just, be kind. Instead of just saying a sermon of saying, what, stand against injustice, it's a very simple, boring sentence. But when it takes the form of a real life true story example, it it becomes something far greater than just a sentence, which is a sermon. And so they say that, I was watching this movie called Finding Joe, and it's based on the work of a philosopher, Joseph Campbell. And Joseph Campbell said that stories and myths have this powerful impact on human psyche, which a normal conversation doesn't have. So, the story of Karbala, therefore, is such a powerful story, and when it meets the medium of art, it just goes beyond our expectations of what a message can look like, and it becomes this explosive depiction of something far beyond our imagination.
Thank you for sharing that, and I totally agree. I think traditional art is very raw, and the passion that is evoked when viewing a piece that relates to you or that touches your heart, it can bring about a lot of change within yourself as well. I mean, just when you're talking about Imam Hussein's chest and the galaxy within the chest, I was tearing up inside of me, because just hearing you describe that without even seeing it, right, brings about a sense of emotion within yourself. So thank you for sharing that beautiful process. When we look at digital art, we spoke about NFTs. We know that these modes exist today. You have 3D renderings, animations, and I feel like each one of these mediums is competing with the other to try and see which one is kind of the best and the most superior form to convey this message. In your opinion, obviously, you're a more traditional artist. What do you think is the position of digital art today in conveying a message vis-a-vis the traditional mode?
I think it is so important to not talk in a way where we compare anything, because my masters, my teachers, they say comparison is the disease of the soul. So we don't compare. I don't compare, but I receive and I accept everything new that comes with open arms, with an open chest, because I think that we have to be progressive. We have to keep moving ahead. I may be a traditional artist, and my work may speak to some people, and I may touch some people's hearts, and their liking, may align with my work. But there are so many youth out there who cannot relate to traditional work, and it would be unfair if we don't delve into these new ways of expression. It would be unfair because that is not what the Prophet taught us. He taught us to be on top of our game, to be ahead of our times, to be always up to date with the best of the best. And I really, really, regard the Holy Prophet as the most modern man, because the kind of reforms he got in the society, he's the top in the 100 most influential people in that book that came out early on in the century. And when I went into understanding what the Prophet was saying and what made him the top man to take that position of the 100 most influential people, one of those things was that he introduced the right to divorce for a woman. Now, these are the things that we don't talk about, and we don't understand the level of modern mind that the Prophet had. So when an artist has to have these new ways of expression, the artist, a Muslim artist, has to always be on top of their game. And tradition doesn't mean that we close the doors to something new that comes up. I think that NFT, 3D, digital animation, all of them are just a new way of expression. And there will be so many people who resonate with it. And they should go and they should work in everything. They should try everything. And then, as an artist, this is what I believe. For me, working with clay is a reminder of the story of Adam. The earth and clay itself has a very physically calming effect when we work with it. So I connect a lot of my work to a meditative art. For me, it's all like a meditation and a way to bring my outer and inner into alignment, my mind, body, and soul. So there's this intention there. But I know that my own sister, she's an amazing graphic designer, and for her that speaks more. For her the digital world speaks more. So even technology, the digital art is just another expression, and we cannot ignore that it will speak to a huge population of people. So it needs to be explored and considered just as important, without any comparison of what is better and what is not. Because if you like mangoes and I like apples, I won't be able to say which one is better, because that's just what your heart will speak to, right? So we go with the heart, I think.
Mangoes is certainly more delicious. um, uh, but yeah, I see your point, and totally. I think we're blessed that we have many creatives in our community, mashallah, who are in so many different areas of art and artistry, right? You have nowadays individuals who depict the scene of Karbala in VR, in virtual reality, and I think that is incredible for our community to have access to such platforms and such an array of artistry to help us understand the true message of Karbala. We're running out of time, and I'm very curious to know about the impact your art has had on non-Muslims. Have you shared your pieces with non-Muslims or non-Shia Muslims? And what's their feedback been like? Have their perception about Islam changed? I mean, when you create a piece, what is your objective? Is your objective to just share your message and how you're feeling, or is there a particular goal in mind that you set for yourself that, I want this to maybe change the perception about a certain situation?
Absolutely. So yes, recently one of my paintings was bought by somebody who's not a Muslim. And I think that I always try to bring in this aspect of the unity of God, that all religions, in the end, worship one God. And whatever name we give him, he is one. And these ideals of justice and morality and love and generosity, these are universal principles that we see in the story of Karbala. So when I create my art, it is always with that sensitivity that it has to speak to a human heart. It is not for a particular religion. In fact, if anything, it should bring us together. It should say that, look, you and I, we have something in common. So to talk about Imam, I made a painting once. It was a painting of a galaxy, and it was dedicated to Imam Jafar Sadiq, and his name was written on it, but it was the font of Star Wars. you know and I just wanted to share that, just because he's Imam Jafar Sadiq doesn't mean that his knowledge is just for us. His knowledge is knowledge. It's for everyone. And just like the Prophet said, that knowledge is the lost inheritance of a believer. So it goes both ways, that we want to work in a way that there's more unity. And I find these little things so important, where we say that we're believers in unity, oneness of God. When the world unites under this aspect where we want to be in a state of unity, it's like unity in diversity, accepting everyone the way they are. And I think that, Alhamdulillah, with the way my work has been going, a lot of non-Muslims have been appreciative that the art has depicted those values that even their hearts can connect with. Because we all have a soul, and soul has a particular anatomy. It doesn't matter what religion we belong to.
Amazing. So what next for Fatima Agha? Can you share some exciting projects you're working on?
Yes, I have a solo show coming up in Karachi, so I'm working on that. I have now started working with a new medium. It's resin art. It's the upcoming thing. So I'm trying to work with it in an innovative way, so that I can use the same medium but create something different. I'm also a ceramicist, so a lot of my work is with ceramics. I use 24 karat gold in my work. And that also has a meaning. Like I said, intention is so important. In our traditional training, we were taught that gold represents God. Because if you see even the frescoes of Jesus in the churches, there's a golden halo around his face. It's to depict his connection to God. In the Holy Quran, in the old manuscripts, you'll see that certain areas are painted with 24 karat gold, because gold is considered the highest, the most shiny, and the purest metal. It is also used as a healing metal, and it's connected to the idea of the purification of soul. It's connected to the idea of alchemy. We know that Bibi Fiza had the art of alchemy. She could convert anything into gold. And the mystics say that the true alchemy is when the lower self becomes nafsul kamila, nafsul marziya, nafsul raziya. So we see that in Imam Hussein's journey, where we hear from the pulpits that God called out to him and said, Ya ayyatuhal nafsul mutmainna irji'i ila rabbika radiyatan marziya. So for me, then to work with gold becomes that intention of expressing the highest form of the soul. So this is what my plans are, inshallah, in future. And I hope that it is beneficial for the people who interact with my work.
Amazing. No, thank you so much, Fatima, for sharing your beautiful story with us. We wish you very well in your future endeavors, and I'm very grateful to have had this chance to speak to you and learn about artistry and expression and your thought process. I certainly will appreciate art a lot more when I do see them. One art that really strikes me the most, I'd gone to Said Mustafa Qazwini's house in Los Angeles, and in his living room he has a huge shrine, an artist expression of the shrine of Imam Hussain, and then in another room he has the streets of Najaf as well. And I asked him, Sayyidina, what do you like most about these pieces? And he said to me, they remind me of my younger days when I was in Iraq. And the shrine connects him with Imam Hussain every single day, and whereby he gives his salams and he performs his ziyarah as well. So it's so nice that art does enable us to connect with the Imam at any given time. And certainly may Allah bless and reward people like yourself who are in this field, and more power to you, inshallah. And we look forward to seeing more of your work, inshallah, in the near future as well. So with that, I bid you farewell, and thank you again for joining us on Hussain Global. And to our dear viewers, thank you very much for joining us on this session, and we look forward for you to stay tuned for the next session. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you.